Hello everybody and welcome to Sunday's comic book review video. Thank you for joining me. With 8 or 9 books on my pull list this week, I'm going to have to get through this quite quickly and dive straight in, because this week I've got issues with my issues. There are a lot of problems with the books, not that any of them were particularly bad this week, but being a comic book reader in this day and age, you need to know a lot of stuff. And no more so, and just a reminder before I kick off with the first book, spoilers abound. I'm going to be talking storylines, character developments, cliffhangers, all that stuff. So if you've not read the books, stop, read, come back, or just fast forward. So yes, more so than any book this week that I had a problem trying to decipher and kind of pick up the history of certain characters was X-Men Blue, their first annual since this new series started, and written by regular writer Colin Bunn. And it's the start of this new storyline, Poison X, which is running through X-Men Blue and the Venom title for the upcoming issues. So I'm only going to get half a story because I'm not going to be picking up the Venom storyline, but hopefully it'll be able to catch you up at the start of each issue of X-Men Blue. But what confuses me here, and I think this happens to a lot of comic book readers, I would say especially new readers and perhaps old alike, that you need to know a lot of the past history of characters that you may not be particularly familiar with. Now, I know, you know, the basics about Venom, his kind of origin, and a little bit of his history, and that he was a villain, and he's kind of worked the kind of good, bad side. He's been, you know, Peter Parker, symbiote together, made him bad, black costume, great stuff. The Secret Wars whole thing. Then we've got him taking over Eddie Brock, Flash Thompson, and then it appears he's back with Eddie Brock here. But that's about my limit of where this character of Venom is currently in our just Marvel universe in general. Never mind our new kind of Marvel Legacy run that we're going through now. Because what kind of not annoyed me, but made me having to look for clues and trying to decipher the intentions of this, I guess, new version of Venom. Because, you know, I always thought Venom was a bad guy. And Brock, yes, he's always been the kind of villainous type. And the symbiote kind of takes over the kind of emotions of the person it's wearing in some respects. But here I found it a little bit more kind of grey area, and it may be something that I don't know about, that I've not picked up. A new kind of version of Venom, because we have running through it as the X-Men are trying to get Venom's help in assisting the team go into space and rescue Scott Summers' father, the leader of the Starjammers. And there is this, all the way through, there's kind of this disembodied voice, which is, I'm guessing, Venom's. And it's turned into almost like kind of the Jiminy Cricket character from Pinocchio. It's the conscience of Eddie Brock. But I didn't get that at first, because I always just thought Venom was a bad guy. And I hope I've read this right, in that the disembodied voice is in fact Venom. And it's Eddie Brock inside that doesn't really want to help the X-Men kids. But Venom, it's the kind of this story of redemption for, I guess, this kind of villain stroke hero character. And so it got very confusing for me, and I just didn't have the energy to go and find out, really. You know, a new reader jumping on this, even if they've been reading X-Men Blue from the start, they're going to be lost. They're not going to understand what is going on here, only the kind of the very basic storyline that's going on. And so for that, it was just a little bit of an annoying issue to be reading for an X-Men Blue book, which I've been enjoying, and we're going to talk about the main title very soon. Apart from that, the artwork by who is it? Edgar Salazar is your typical kind of comic book fare. Nothing too fantastic. Plenty of kind of action scenes here. It does have this kind of Star Wars moment where they land on this planet and they go into a bar and people all look at them strangely. So it kind of had that Star Wars vibe to it towards the end, which I don't know whether it was on purpose or not. Again, it was a fun enough read, but if you want to know more and feel more invested to all the characters, it's definitely a further reading kind of job to do, which I just want to pick up a comic book and be happy to read it and get it, basically. So that was X-Men Blue Annual #1. Right, let's talk about the other X-Men Blue title, the main series, issue #20, also written by Cullen Bunn, and the final part to this Cross-Time Capers storyline. And to be fair, I was kind of disappointed at the way this ended, but I guess its purpose is for this title to continue, which is okay by me. I'm enjoying it. It's a fun comic book ride, nothing too intense to read through, but I just kind of felt, oh, you could have done something possibly better with this. I wouldn't so much have minded if they had ended this but made it into something new, and I've spoken about, you know, my idea of what they could have done with this. However, it addresses them coming back to the time where they were kind of almost just after they were kind of plucked from the past to come into our present, their future. And yeah, it's a big fight. It's a big fight scene. There is this version of Charles Xavier, I think it's his son, that's gone bad, and they're from the very far future, and they've been messing around with time, and of course they saw the opportunity where our young kids from the 60s have been brought to our present day, and there's a gap. There's a kind of hole where the X-Men should be, so they've come to mess things up for the current timeline. So of course we're going to have a fight with these evil X-Men called the Brotherhood, and our regular teen displaced X-Men, the kids. And just as you know, it seems that they're on the rails, as is always the case. All the rest of the issues kind of have a reason for being there, because Hank manages to bring them back from their places in time to come and help them and turn the tide on the battle. And you do get some great art. I mean, you have the double page spread of all the versions of the X-Men that they've met in the previous parts of this storyline come and basically, you know, turn the tide of the battle, and they manage to escape, as, you know, the baddies normally do. But then it's what happens afterwards with this, and it's kind of like, it's that kind of time paradox where, and the idea that Magneto in the past has to have had all this happen for them to allow him to make this time platform, this time machine that we all thought he was making to get the kids back to their own time. But really it's to give the kids the opportunity to come back and stop this from happening. Oh, when time gets involved in the X-Men, it gets very, very complicated. There are kind of sweet moments where the kids meet up with with Charles Xavier from the past, where they've been plucked from, and Charles Xavier knows that they have to go back to our time, because if they came back knowing what they know, it may have huge ruptions from them being in the present day, their future. And so if they're ever going to come back, they've really got to come back just before they were taken, without that knowledge of what's to come. And that, like I say, there's a kind of sweet moment there between the teenage Jean Grey and Charles Xavier. All in all, like I said, it was a little bit disappointing, but we'll see how it goes. There is obviously the big bit at the end where Magneto seems to have kind of crossed that line again from being the good guy who has dubious morals but kind of doesn't cross that line, to the point where he's crossed that line and seemingly destroys and kills those future X-Men that have been messing around with time. So we'll see how that pans out in future issues. Black Science, issue number 34, from Rick Remender, Matteo Scalera and Mauricio D'Inicio on colours. And it's fortunate for these type of books, and I'm going to kind of pick up this point in later books. I'm going to talk about that when these kind of image titles take maybe a month or two off on hiatus, sometimes 3, to help the writers and the artists either catch up on other books they're writing, in Rick Remender's case, there's a lot of them, or, you know, give the artists a little bit of a breather to again catch up with the next story up, because this is indeed the final part of this particular one. So these kind of catch up kind of overviews, story so far captions, can come in very handy. Unfortunately with Black Science, because its solicitations seem to be so sporadic, I'm always kind of lost with Black Science. Not that I'm not enjoying it, because I am. I think it's a fantastic kind of sci-fi epic of a book that I've been enjoying for so long now. But there is so much going on, and again it's one of those messing around with time in different dimensions, kind of a multiverse type affair going on here, as we have Kadir going from dimension to dimension, trying to stop something. I don't know what he's trying to stop anymore, apart from the fact that he just seems to be messing it up with every dimension he goes to. But we have, like, I mean, this book is just so widespreading at the moment, not just in like kind of the genres it does, because, you know, you've got a bit of like sci-fi in there, you've got a bit of fantasy in there, you've got a bit of kind of apocalyptic universes and all that, and there's even like superhero action in there with the superhero family. You got a little bit of the young son there as one of the superheroes, which what did he call himself? The Atomic Fury. And they're all trying to kind of stop kind of, what is it, reality and the oblivion from, you know, crashing and basically becoming nothingness. And I don't know what's going on. Grant and his wife, is it Pia or Mia? I think it's Mia. They seem to be kind of outside of all the commotion now that's going on, and they're kind of out of the whole oblivion thing. They're in this, I think it's called a Neververse, or maybe that's where everyone is at the moment and they're outside it. But everything just kind of seems to come to a climax, and at the end of this it feels like there's an almost happy ending, but it only leaves kind of Grant and his wife there. But they are off, it seems, to kind of remove themselves from that quiet, tranquil land that they found at the moment to go and save the rest of their family for good. This series is wrapping up, I'm guessing, with the next story arc, because I think it finishes with issue 40, so we're probably going to get a last 6-issue story arc out of this, or 5 or 6 issue storyline. But I'm just happy for the little brief overview at the start to kind of almost catch me up and kind of familiarise myself with what has been going on, because as much as I love this book and as much as I like seeing all the gorgeous pictures from Matteo Scalero and Morosino, it's a head scratcher. It's one of those books I think you have to go back and reread in story arcs, if not from the very beginning. It started off so nicely, just jumping from dimension to dimension, and then it just got crazier and crazier. But I'll always love Black Science. I'm obviously going to keep going to the very end with this, and hopefully by the end of it it will make some sort of sense, or just going to have to start it right from the beginning again and try and decipher everything and make maps of where they've all gone and what this means and what that means. But still great stuff. It's Black Science, it's Rick Remender. Exo Man of War issue number 11 from Matt Kent continues with, I guess, the start of a new story arc. And again, this is another one of those issues that myself and probably a lot of other readers of comic books do have from time to time. With this book, it's all about to do with the art, really. The story is great. It's solid as always from Matt Kent. We've got these bounty hunters that have come to kind of take down Arik, who has taken over this world, who's having a bit of a rough time trying to keep all the various factions in line and working together to make a better world, but not doing the greatest of jobs at it. So these bounty hunters have been purchased, I guess, their talents paid for to bring him down, so the actual residents of this planet can run the planet how they want to and see fit. But it's the artwork. Now, it's not bad in any shape or form. It's your standard kind of comic book fare, to be honest. Just that kind of that first page is quite an apt version of it, because what we've had over the last few story arcs is these gorgeous kind of painted style artwork from some great artists who I hope to see more and more of their work. So, and I thought we were going to keep with that, because while we have had probably about two or three different artists, they've all not necessarily aped each other's style, but they have a style in common, and that is these gorgeous painted pieces of art that they put inside these panels and sometimes outside the panels. So when you get one that is, as I said, more standard comic book fare art style, I find it just a kind of little, not jarring, because like I said, it's still great art, but it not takes you aback, but there's this kind of juxtaposition, I guess you could say, from these two very distinct art styles. And I was just hoping to have some common fluidity running throughout this book, which apparently is actually somewhat of an ongoing. It's not the maxi series that I thought it would be. I don't know how long Matt Kent is going to stay on the book. Is he going to be the main writer throughout however long it runs, or is he going to give up the reins and hand it on to another writer as he does, you know, more of his own work that he's currently doing? Who knows? But still a fun sci-fi book that I've really been enjoying, and glad that I took a chance with on the recommendation of one of the comic book staff in the shop that I go to. So still, it's a great read. It's still nice to look at. just missed that that gorgeous, you know, awe-inspiring kind of painted style that we've had since this began, and for the last 10 or so issues. Monstrous issue number 14. Now this book has been away for quite some time. Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda took a huge break from this book. I don't know whether they were off doing other stuff or because of the such detailed work from Sana Takeda on this book that she obviously needed a long time to make sure, I'm guessing, at least the next story arc, or towards this story arc, is the end of this story arc is in the bag, because it is gorgeous. It's so infinitely detailed with all these amazing characters, both anthropomorphic, feline and human and demonic, that it must take an enormous effort to bring this kind of book out. So in some respects I can forgive it being away for so long, because it is a fantastic book, really kind of hits my buttons when it comes to kind of like the fantasy genre, of which this is firmly steeped in. And again, just like Black Science, it's a good job that they have this kind of story so far a little bit, which kind of covers really what was going on in the last story arc with the Island of Bones. Our main character, Micah, learning more about her mother and the kind of demon that lies behind her, and her powers that she has been kind of handed down through a bloodline. And again, this is one of those books where there is a lot going on. There's not just kind of like the action, the demons, you know, erupting from the water in this. As they make their escape, we have a demon from the bottom of the sea stop their attackers, their pursuers, from getting any closer to them. But there's kind of like political intrigue in here. You know, subterfuge. There's characters that you think are good, but you kind of wonder what their real motives and agendas are. And that can't be all filled in so succinctly in this overview part. So it is a case of you have to go back and start rereading issues, and you wonder, well, how far back do I have to go to reacquaint myself with this world? And they really don't, and these two really don't do any more than move this storyline along, which is fairly acceptable. Really, you know, we don't want to be going over and over everything once again, because the story just won't progress that way. And I guess this issue and this title has, I guess, suffered from being away for so long, which is a shame, because as I said, it's a lovely book to look at. There is some solid storyline stories being told here, and I just really lap up every page. As I said, just needs to kind of reacquaint myself with various plot lines and how they're converging or diverging, as the case may be. And there are so many characters in here, and it's again difficult to decipher who are the good guys and who are the bad guys, if indeed any of them are any of those things. But it's a fantastic world that these two have created, and I'd like to see this go for, you know, at least probably maybe another 2 story arcs, this one, and maybe a finale to Monstrous. It is a great book, but do I see it going on as an ongoing? Not really. This story has to have a finite ending, or it just gets maybe too messy. It kind of seems to veer towards that kind of manga-esque storyline telling, where anyone's familiar with reading manga, not a lot happens in a very long length of time in manga when you read it, and probably a day could last about 20 issues, and the storyline not seem to have gone very far, and I kind of get that with Monstrous, but we'll see. I'll still be picking this up. Let's talk about the only DC book that was on my pull list this week. It's The Flash, issue number 39, and the start of a new storyline, Perfect Storm. And this kind of harkens back to the first issue I spoke about in this video, which was X-Men Blues Annual, and knowing about a character but not necessarily the full history and all the transformations a character has gone through. Now, as you can see from the title, from the cover of this new title, Grodd's back. Now, I'm familiar with Grodd, not necessarily from the comic books, but I've seen him in the DC cartoons. He's kind of like a very intelligent gorilla. Is he particularly associated with Flash? I'm not sure, but there seems to be some connection between these two. We have this kind of prologue at the start about what is clearly about the Speed Force and how it's been there since, I guess, the dawn of time, and different people have taken it at different times and different eras and used it for whatever their purposes may be. And of course it's now Barry Allen, and that's a gorgeous double page spread of a typical Flash pose, but still very fun and very exciting. And this issue kind of brings back the Barry Allen and the Iris storyline after their kind of breakup and separation, and Iris now really wanting to know about Flash's life, and this is what we get in the first half of this book. Flash showing Iris, you know, everything that he has to do, his kind of tricks of the trade, and all that good superheroic stuff, while Iris has, you know, that kind of that conscience in her. Can she live this life? Can she come back together with Barry knowing all this stuff? And there's the whole, we've had it all before, I know, the whole superheroes being masked because they want to save and protect those nearest and dearest to them, and we go over this again, and I kind of just take it that this is always going to come up at some point when you read a superhero comic book, whether it's at DC or Marvel, or any kind of superhero that keeps their identity secret. But then we have the reintroduction of his ex-girlfriend, who is now seems to have turned to the dark side, and she's brought this new villain, I'm guessing, into the fray. Rajan, I think his name is this Master of Lightning. We all thought he was going to be the big bad, but no, he's still working for someone else, and that's Grodd. He's been the master planner behind all this, and for some reason he thinks the Speed Force should always have been his, and this is what all these kind of machinations have been about up till now. So while I do feel kind of I'm not really sure what's going on, I don't know, there's something about the way Joshua Williamson writes this, in a kind of, he knows there are readers out there that might not be totally, you know, on board with the Flash or his history, what it's all been through, and he almost kind of eases new readers into this world and makes it easier for them to be reading this book and not feel so alienated, which is how I kind of felt with X-Men Blues Annual. So that's why I'm a little bit more happy with this, and I'm more excited to see where this is going, because I believe this is leading up to a big Flash event. I'm trying to remember what it was called now, but obviously it's all to do with the Speed Force. It's going to change the Flash's universe forever, as these big events always do. Let's just hope it doesn't bleed out into too many other titles I don't know how many kind of titles that the Flash is kind of involved with, apart from obviously I'm guessing he's in the Justice League title, but let's hope it doesn't spread too far out, so I'm kind of reading only parts of the story, which I know a lot of us are struggling with in all sorts of areas within Marvel and DC, where they have these seemingly great, interesting event storylines, but to get the whole picture you then have to fork out your hard-earned cash for titles that you may not necessarily already be picking up, just so you get the full story, which, let's be honest, sometimes is not even needed. It kind of barely touches what the main event is. I would love for DC just to do a storyline that may be a huge event and just keep it to that particular title, or just have a main event mini-series, maxi-series, and just for the story to dwell in that title. I don't know. It's one of those things that the kind of bugbear that we all have, but still, Flash, really enjoying it. Glad I've stayed on board. Getting towards the end now. This is not the penultimate, this is the third to last book of the week, Maestro's issue number 4, and because it's so new, it's so fresh, it's coming out every month, it's not a struggle to remember what is going on here. However, we get this storyline that doesn't really run in continuity, in the present time. This is kind of more of a flashback storyline, showing more of the dysfunctional family dynamics that are now new main character, the son of this Earth woman and this hugely omnipotent kind of magician, not a magician, a wizard type character, and how kind of, not evil he is, but kind of cruel, as he just doesn't seem to get his son, expects his son to be just like him, and tortures him mercilessly to the point where his mother can take no more, and goes on this trial to allow her and her son to be free of this pretty effed up world, and his father's kind of sadistic ways, and it's just a riot to read. It really is. It's full of kind of the fantasy. There's lots of gore involved here. We have his father basically nail him to a thorny cross as punishment for not doing what he's told, and it's up to his mother to do this kind of quest, which we don't see, but we see the outcome of it as she comes back from surviving it, clearly only just, and allowing the two of them to leave this land and live their own lives. Just a fantastic, I mean, it's so gorgeously colourful and exciting, but there is that line of it's very violent, it's very gory. Clearly it's an adult book, not for kiddies to be looking at and turning the pages on. They'll have nightmares for weeks. Into therapy they will go. But great stuff, love this, and I will be continuing to pick this one up for sure. We have, just before we come to the end, our penultimate book, Chip Zdarsky's Marvel 2-in-1, The Thing and the Human Torch, giving us just a glimpse of a fraction of the Fantastic Four, which we are sorely missing in the Marvel Universe. But perhaps through this title we are going to get them back, as we have the Thing and the Human Torch teaming up to go in search of Reed and Sue and the kids. And they are headed in this to Monster Island. And this is just a fantastically fun book. It's back to almost the roots of fun comics from the 70s, where it's just adventure. We're going to have a lot of fun here. We we have the, you know, the big bad of Mole Man. He's got all his kind of creatures, his mole people, and then you've got all the creatures from, I think it was Monsters Unleashed living here, and of course they're going to have a big fight, and it's all kind of a bit over the top comic book nonsense, but it's eminently fun and entertaining to read, and that's just what you need through all this. Just something that doesn't take it itself particularly serious, and you can just enjoy and put down and go, I've just read a fun comic book. In this book, like I said, they're off to Monster Island to find a clue to the whereabouts of the rest of the Fantastic Four, and we get a kind of flashback, a storyline about how Ben and Reed used to taunt and tease Victor Von Doom from their college days, and it's just a very light-hearted moment, but obviously it leads them on to the next step of their adventure, and they discover, you know, a scientific doohickey that Reed's obviously made, and will assist them in hopefully getting closer and closer to having our Fantastic Four back. And I can't wait to see that and have a new Fantastic Four comic come out in the near future. I'll have to have a look. I just get the feeling they're waiting for perhaps an anniversary moment to occur, so I don't know whether it's coming up to, I don't know, a big year for Fantastic Four, and they're kind of building towards that and then explode with more Fantastic Four goodness. I'll have to look into that and maybe check back with you all on that. But if you just want to have fun with a book, bit of adventure with two of the Fantastic Four, this book is for you. Chip Zdarsky's doing great stuff on here. It's funny, it's serious, it's got Doctor Doom in it as well. What more can you ask for? And finally, my pick of the week from my pull list from Wednesday is another Matt Kindt written book. It's Department H, issue number 22 from Dark Horse Comics. And the great thing about this, and again, this is a book that comes out very regularly. There's been no hiatus as far as I can remember. It's come out solidly month after month, and it's layered the mystery of the murder of our main character's father, but still had this tension of having to reach the surface, though what awaits them up there, are they going to make it? And Matt Kindt's just been writing a great story. He's such a good storyteller. But the thing I like most about this, despite the fact that I don't want to say not a lot goes on, because it does, they find out that really only one of them, along with the guy who's on like the next tier up from the ocean floor, from the ocean surface, has enough air to reach it. And so it's that kind of dilemma of who is going to be left behind and who is going to attempt to make it to the surface, because again there is no surefire guarantee that whoever does go makes it with apparently the cure to the virus. But then there are all these moral quandaries that go on within this particular issue, that is humanity on the surface kind of worthy of surviving? Have they screwed up the planet so much that this is just the world's telling everyone, right, you had a go, you didn't do very well, it's basically time to start again with, I guess, a clean slate. And so there is that moral quandary, but obviously it's our main character. I think her name, is it Mia? I can't remember. There's so many Mias and Micahs and Pias going on in comic books these days. It's obviously a very popular name, but there are obviously a lot of arguments within the group about who's to go, and obviously she is the one to eventually go. But what he does very well, along with his wife Charlene, is the way he writes and panels this. Now normally you would just look and go, oh, it's that kind of, there's just 6 panels on every page. as you go through it. But what he's done by making these panels kind of very small and the borders outside them very black, very dark, is shown the claustrophobic nature of the predicament they found themselves in, the confinement that they have. That's I mean, if these panels had got even smaller and smaller, it would have made even more sense to it. But as I show you, it goes on, and then finally towards the end, as she has to leave the submersible, as she's getting further and further up, and the submersible runs out of air, and then her suit runs out of air, and then as she kind of looks like she's almost getting to the surface, the whole panel, you know, the whole page is taken up as she is in the kind of vastness of the ocean. And so what started out as very confined in these small tiny 6 boxes on a page, suddenly she's on her own, very small within the page. It just shows, you know, not only her small part in this huge world, but just again the expanse that she now finds herself in, and is she going to make it to the surface? Just a great use of the panelling and the way the story is taken from there, that I just had to make this my pick of the week. It's a shame that there's only, I think, 2 more issues of this to go. We'll see how this all wraps up, whether she makes it to the surface, whether she uses the cure, whether she finds out who killed her father and why. So that's all my comic books this week. Thank you for watching. I hope I haven't gone on too long, but you kept here and you enjoyed my thoughts and opinions on the books. Let me know in the comments section down below what you thought of the books I picked up, if you did read any of them. And give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe if you've not been here before, because I've been making quite a few videos of late, so it's time to catch up. Until next time, bye bye.